Welcome back to Project Anonymous.
In today's video, we're going to go a little bit more in depth in the Trace Bitmap feature in Inkscape and Inkstitch and show you how to fix some of the issues that may arise as you do it.
So stick around to see how we do it. If you haven't already checked out our last two Inkscape tutorials, go ahead and check it out right here.
Yeah, you're going to want to watch those two first. So what we're going to do this time is a little bit more complex design of Trace Bitmap rather than just using a simple mistletoe that we did last time. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a screenshot from a character in WandaVision called Agatha Harkness?
Agatha Hart.
Anywho, Agnes, as she's called in the episode, she does a very famous wink. Do the wink. Yeah, so we're gonna take a screenshot of that wink and we're gonna turn it into something that we can embroider into a patch because the wink has kind of turned into a famous meme. So we're gonna use it. Okay, so we've already found the screenshot. And what we need to do now is kind of turn it into a black and white image. Now, I could do this in GIMP or some other photo software, but I like using this silhouette image app that I have on my phone. So I couldn't, screen record that being done on the phone. But this is the app that we used to basically turn it into this black and white image. And just to kind of show you a comparison of the before and after. The app is really simple to use. And you kind of just set the contrast to where you want it. So this is the black and white image we're going to use. We'll go ahead and open up Inkscape and open up our 4x4 template, import the image. Okay, we'll set the layer and we'll size it. Okay, so now we're going to trace bitmap, and this should be pretty simple since it's already a black and white image. Go ahead and update, and OK. All right, now we have our traced bitmap on top. We'll go ahead and move it to the trace layer, and we'll go ahead and hide the image. So here is our trace. Now, if we switch over to the node view, which over there, right there, you can see it's made up of a bunch of nodes like we said before.
A lot. Yeah,
so you can see there's a whole bunch of little spots on there. I don't think are very necessary for the image. Do a params check just to kind of show some of the issues you may run into. And you can see right here we have an error that we'll need to address. So back over into the nodes view. What I'm going to do essentially is delete some of these small, unimportant details to essentially simplify the design. But more importantly, your embroidery machine won't be able to do all of the intricate detail because we're making this like a 3x3 patch. So I'm just deleting the kind of unimportant specs in the design by just scrolling or making a box over those nodes and then deleting it. Kind of simplify it. All right, so got all the little details out. I'll do another params check. And we still have an error. So now what I'll do is go back into the nodes view and you'll see there's still a whole bunch of nodes. Rather than going through each one trying to see where the crossover issue is, I'm just going to go to the simplify option and simplify it. And you can see you lost a little bit of detail in there, but I can still tell it's Agatha. So I think we're good with that. And I'll do another params check here to see if we can get through with this. Nope, still not working. So the next thing I'm going to do is a break apart option. Now this is helpful in that when you have an object or image that has independent parts to it that isn't connected to each other, a break apart essentially will kind of break up the image into those individual pieces so that the software will know where to start and stop in your design when embroidering. So for instance, here we have Agatha's nose and Agatha's mouth and some of the few little dots that are not connected to any other part of the image that need to be broken apart to get it to work right. Now there is some issues when doing this, because when you do a break apart option, it's going to turn every single part of the design into the primary color of the design. So in this case, everything's going to turn black, and you'll see that. But those little pieces and details of the image are still there. They're just hidden. And we'll have to essentially try to figure out a way to get those back again, and we'll show you how. And what happens is the biggest part of the image becomes the top level of that layer, so that all of the little parts are actually underneath it, which is why you can't select on those little bits. So what we're going to do is we're going to play with the levels within the layer to move down the big silhouette of her head and move it to the background so that we can start selecting on the other parts of the image. So I'm just going to select on everything but the big part, and I'm going to move it up to the top level and change the color to white so you can see it. And you can see now everything is on the top level now, and then I get rid of the next biggest level. So what I'm doing is whatever my biggest object around, I'm deselecting it, and then I'm moving forward everything else into the highest level. And I continue to do this until I get all of the details, and I just create levels on top of each other, black and white, alternating, till I can get my full object back. And then what I'm going to do is put everything on the same level, and you'll see how I do that here. So I'm just getting all the details back into the image, and I'm alternating black and white so I can see them all. You can see how the levels are now put back in the correct order so that you can see the image. But what I'm going to do now is an exclusion, which will essentially get rid of all of the white part of the design one by one, and you'll see I'm making a copy of it just in case, because I don't want to ruin anything. But you can see I did an exclusion there, and then I'm going to move the big silhouette over and put my exclusion there. And you see I have the snap node feature on in the upper right hand corner. And what I'm doing is I'm excluding the object by selecting an object and its corresponding surrounding object, hitting the exclusion button, which essentially deletes the smaller object, which is what we wanted to begin with when we did this break apart. The difference between this and what it was looking like before is that now my nose is an individual object, my mouth is an individual object, compared to just one big object where Inkstitch wouldn't know how to go about sewing it. And now I'm going to do a params check and see if that fixed it. And look at that, params is now working.
So this can be a very time-consuming or tedious process, so...
Yeah, take your time. Again, think about it as just leveling out all of these different levels. When you hit break apart, every individual part that's not connected, so you can think about it like if you're using letters, anything with like a hole in the letter, like a O, if you did a break apart on the letter O, it would make the large outside image as a big black circle, and then the inner circle outline would become its own object. And all you're doing is you're putting that smaller object on top, and then you're excluding it so that it makes the hole again in the O.
Is it still like for thicker fabric so you don't have to do like over top
So
of each other?
this is very good at getting your design into one level. If you had a very complex design that was a bunch of different colors just stacked on top of each other, if you did one object at a time and did an exclusion, it essentially bumps down a level so that you can just fill in that area so that you're sewing on one level. And this is different than layers. Layers is an order of stitch that you can do. Levels is more of like the different levels of your design within a layer. All right, so what I'm doing now is making a fill layer that's going to be my background. And I'm just going to do a white circle background and just trying to get it to about 3 inches by 3 inches using the little tape measure at the top there. Okay, and once I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of it. Command C and Command V to make a copy. Okay, and I'm going to move these objects to my fill layer. And I'm going to move the fill layer down below the trace layer so that I can see my trace on top of it, because I want the fill layer to sew first. And then I'm going to highlight my object or my trace, and I'm going to move it to where I want it on the patch and resize. Again, holding control down so I don't distort in the X or Y axis. So what I'm doing is I'm moving the trace that we want on top of the fill layer, putting it where I want it, and then I'm doing an intersection command to essentially cut off the part that I don't need anymore. So again, that's the intersection command, and it will make that curved bottom that will match up with my fill layer very nicely. Unfortunately, it turns it white, but then I can just hit the black button and it turns it back. So now I can move it right on top of my circle patch and it matches up perfectly. Now I turn the background red so that we can see if we missed any parts of our exclusions, and you can see I missed a little bit right there, which means I need to do another exclusion. So again, I'm going to hit the small area and encircle it, and then I'm going to hit the big area and go to exclusion. And you can see it went away, and now I can tell because the red background it got rid of that. It got rid of that level. So I turn it back white. I made another copy of the fill because this is going to be my satin stitch. So I'm going to create a new layer. Just make a new layer for that, and then I'm going to move that to that layer. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add some text on here. Just thought it'd be funny to put telework there, right? So I'm going to do a wrap text around object or path, and I'm going to curve the word telework around the circle. So you can see you do that right here. And if you want it on the inside of the circle, you can just hit that up down button or invert button, and it will put it on the inside of your path. I can just kind of play with the size to get it where I want, curve it around. So it's important to note right now that this word telework right now is tied to that circle object, and I can't move it until I convert it to a path. I'm going to do that by going to Object to Path. And you can see it kind of shrinks there, the box, and then now it's independent and I can move it wherever I want. But it's important to know I can't edit the text anymore other than distorting it by stretching or resizing. But I can't, change the word at this point because it's now seen as a path, not an object. So basically the program doesn't see it as a word anymore. Okay, I'm just moving my satin stitch over on top, and I change the opacity so I can make sure I get it nice and centered on top of that fill stitch, and then I turn the opacity back up to 100%, and that's my design.
So you may have an issue when using text when you go into Params. So what we do is we're gonna break it apart.
Right, so again, just like before with the image and we're having problems getting it to go because the mouth and nose were separate objects, or rather they weren't connected to the main object, you may have to break up your words into individual letters, and in some cases, like an I, right, so like an I or a J or an exclamation point where there's different parts of the same letter, you may have to break it apart even further to get individual boxes around each part of each letter.
I remember having to do that.
For some reason, it did not throw that issue up for us. I'm not sure if it's because we have an updated version, but we have seen this in the past with previous versions of this program where we've had to break it apart. So we'll go ahead and show you now how to go ahead and break that apart. Okay, so I'm just going to move the word off to the side so we can see it better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ungroup this word. You hit ungroup there, and it will essentially break apart this word into individual letters, or ungroup them, so that my T is now independent from the rest of the word where it wasn't before. Highlight everything, and I'll just show you a params check real quick. Again, our word was working before. This may help you, and it may work for you. It seems to be working for us. So now I'm going to do the break apart and go path, break apart. And now you can see here, just like we were discussing with the main tracing, the outline of the E here is independent of the inner outline of the hole in the E. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the big part down to the bottom level, and which allows us to select the upper level. Now we're going to select both levels, and we're going to go hit exclusion. And you can see that's how you get rid of that.
If you're having any issues with text or letters or anything like that, this trick should fix it.
It should. So now we're going to do a simulator preview, because I always like to see it before we stitch it out. And this looks amazing. This is going to turn out great. So we're saving our design now, what we want it to be called, because when we export it into a PES file, it will default to whatever the SVG saved file name is.
And also if it exits out.
Yeah, if you get some kind of glitch where Inkscape just quits on you and you didn't save any of your work, that would suck.
Bad.
That would be bad. Okay, so we're going to go to Embroider. So if this is your first time converting into Embroider file, you'll notice that your directory is going to be empty. So you have to define with a path name of where your files are going to be saved at. So you're basically going to open up your Finder window into where you would like your files to be saved. And for our case, we're just going to use the desktop. And we're going to go to the settings wheel, and we're going to go to copy path name, or copy folder's path name, and paste it in there. And now all of our PES files that we save or export are going to be saved to our desktop.
So now it's time for the finished review. It looks like this.
Yeah, no, it
It's
turned
so
out
nice.
really good. What we ended up doing is we used a white fabric with a pretty thick stabilizer on there, stitched out our design, and cut it out. And we ended up using a tip that one of you gave us when using a different color fabric, when cutting out the patch, of using a Sharpie on the edge, so it kind of hides the white fabric on the outside of the satin stitch. And it turned out amazing. Thank you for the tip.
It's such a good tip.
Yeah.
So thank you. So go ahead and comment down below any video ideas you have for us, or any projects you want us to do, or any tips you have that might be useful for us. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like it if you liked it.
Like it.
Subscribe if you enjoy our content.
Subscribe.
And turn on those notifications so you get reminded every single time we post a video. Stay crafty.
And be happy.